Today's event forms part of the Youth Economy Agency's ongoing initiatives to develop the holistic entrepreneur. So we have a series of training programs, but this business mixer is so that you can meet and mingle with people in your business area or in different sectors as well. I had the pleasure of seeing two gentlemen speaking outside and realizing that they were into the same business. They're both into food and beverage, well, agro-processing, because they're making chips. And it was really refreshing to see them speaking about the issues that they face and sharing ideas and sharing information. And that's why we're here this evening. Understanding legal rights and obligations is crucial for the success of any business and even more crucial for our small businesses. We have brought together a very distinguished panel of professionals who are going to share with us their expertise this evening. So like we said, please feel free to ask questions. I will get the ball rolling. Our theme is Know Your Rights, Legal Empowerment for Young Entrepreneurs. So since Teddyson is closest to me, I'm going to pose my first question to him. And I hope that I can ask this question. I remember a few years ago, there was a situation involving one of your songs being, I don't want to say the word duplicated, but somebody had a can we speak about this? Okay, awesome. Because we have a lot of creatives in the audience as well. And a lot of people have questions when it comes to intellectual property. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about your experience and how you handled that, and maybe one of the lawyers can chime in and tell us a little bit more.
That was one of the experiences that opened my eyes as to what really can happen or what really happens in the industry.
Right.
I had a situation where there's a song that I think it was a song called Big People Party. And that song was the hook for that song, melody, everything was written by yours truly. And because St. Lucia was not in a position for people to know, like we weren't making noise with music, it still was a kind of way that, okay, somebody can just take that, use that, and just do what they do, and then you can't really move. So one of I specifically remember that night. The song was written like 2 years previously before the new song came out. So one of the other artists, one of the writers, decided to take the hook of the song, and they gave it to another artist, and they wrote a new verse. They wrote new, but they kept the melody of everything. And I remember they tried to get me to rush the day before, the night before. I remember I getting a call probably at midnight, Teddy, we send something that's signed. Like, how you mean send something to sign? I know you.
Right.
Send something to sign quick because a song, I was like, really? So in Trinidad, your hand is a bacchanal that you understand between.
Right.
And me wanting to always be somebody representing St. Lucia, that's not the way I wanted my first or people to get to know who,
Right.
I am. I remember that night for Soca Monarch, I home watching TV and hearing the whole of Trinidad singing Big People, and I cry.
Wow.
I cry watching people sing something that I wrote, but they didn't know I wrote it because a big boy in the business decided, with another set of people to take, the hook of the song and create their own thing. Back and forth, lawyers got involved. There was so much back and forth. I said, you know what? Keep it, I don't want anything. I said, I don't want anything. That was probably his biggest song ever, taught the entire make, everything. I ain't get a cent. I said, keep it. Every rope have an end. It's okay. It ain't even worth me doing. So I said to myself, is either Teddy, okay. So here's one thing. Sometimes it depends on how you watch the glass, You understand? I said to myself, okay, so you're good enough to do something that everybody can sing to. That means you have it. Or I could have gone a different route, a violent route, and get, that kind of stuff. I went back downstairs my house. The year after, the group that did the song broke up. The year after that, that's when Ali happened. And I learned right now that anything that I do, you make sure everything is dotted out. Everything is done, everything. Because people like to take, like it can be a melody. It can be a phrase, it can be a word, that you decided to put your stamp on. Make sure you copyright that, make sure you sort that out.
Natalie, I would love to hear your opinion on this because I know this is your area.
Sadly, I've heard it so many times from so many clients. That's correct. What you failed to do was to copyright your work. And it's something that I think most entrepreneurs do, not just artists, or your creatives generally, but business owners. You come with this great idea of a new business, and you just off you go, and you're running, doing everything else. You're telling the whole world about what your great idea is, but you don't stop to actually protect it. So that's the whole idea of intellectual property, is that creative idea in your mind that you need to protect. And many don't do that. So Teddyson learned the hard way. I think about 3 months ago, she may be in the audience, I don't know her, a young lady created a handbag. And it was a handbag, I think, that could sort of zip up and keep changing colors and styles, whatever else it is. And obviously, in the middle of COVID and things like that, she spent her time working on this handbag and then put it out there. And somebody, wherever they were in the world, thought, oh, that's a great idea. And we produced the handbag and got about millions and millions of hits, and literally sold out the entire product line that they created. And this young lady sitting right here in St. Lucia got nothing from that. So we've got trademarks, we have patents, and we have what Teddyson now I know knows all about, are copyrights. So, and these are the 3 main pillars of what we call our intellectual property laws in St. Lucia. It's something that, as I say, because you're all young and keen and eager to go, it's the one thing that many of us forget. You put that very high up on your list of to-dos, is that once I've got this idea, I protect it. And protecting it doesn't mean like keep it quiet and don't tell anyone, because obviously you need sounding boards, but it just means that, do something to keep it, make sure that everyone knows that that's yours. I have an envelope in one of my filing cabinets where a young lady wrote a play. And she quite smartly, I was very, very surprised that she even knew about this, came to me and said, I've written this play. It's probably about 15 years ago. It's still in my filing cabinet today. And we've sealed it, and we scribbled across the seal and put a name and date and everything on it, and I still have it. Should that play appear somewhere without her having or be opened this envelope, then obviously it's been copyrighted. Yeah? Someone now has taken away her intellectual property that she has managed to safeguard.
Thank you so much, Natalie. And you mentioned trademarks, patents, and copyrights. Can you very briefly just tell us the difference between the 3 of them?
Creatives, what you need to do is to copyright your ideas, your music, your plays, your words, films, etc. like that. I think I spoke to someone earlier, it was Venetia? Yes, and somebody else as well, patents. Or this young lady, the story I gave, she created this new handbag, and things that happened, she should have patented her idea and kept that first, and protected that. And what am I missing? Oh, and a trademark. So trademark is what most people will think of logos. Yeah. So you've sat there, you've got this great idea, you have great business, and then you sit and you design some pretty logo, or you come up with a lovely name or a tagline for it. That's your trademark. That's that thing that people will know you by. So there's a product you make, but then they're going to know you by something. So that label that you attach to it, and then say, this handbag I'm now going to call Jay-Z. And you do a logo for Jay-Z. Well, Jay-Z is your trademark, and your handbag, you've patented the whole the creative part of it. That's your patent.
Nicolai, I would like to ask you a question. I know that you have a lot of experience dealing with labor relations. A few of our entrepreneurs here today have a few employees. So I would like to give an example, because this is something that we see all of the time. Let's say that I am a hairdresser, and I also work a full-time job. So I have employed a cousin, maybe, to work in my salon while I'm doing my full-time job. I see you raising your eyebrow like that's already a problem. So my cousin is employed, I pay her, we have no formal contract or anything. Do I need to pay NIC for this person?
NIC is a law. You must pay NIC for any employees that you have. So anytime somebody he's an employee of yours, full-time, part-time, you must minus the NIC, 5% from the employee's pay, 5% you match it and you pay to the NIC. But I smiled when you said you hired your cousin without a contract. That is an interesting bit that I don't want to let escape. Most people enter employment relationships without a contract. And my advice would be to never enter any employment relationship without a contract. If you're not family, it's fine. Then there are laws there to protect you. Once you go to work for a family member, things become dicey. If that family member terminates you, you have no contract, then there's nothing that can happen to you legally,
Right.
because you're working for the family business. So I smiled when you said that, because I know most young entrepreneurs tend to hire family members.
Correct.
And if you are hiring family members, it will do you well. Well, if you have bad intentions, you would not give them a contract. If you have bad intentions. But for fairness, you should give every employer a contract, especially your family. You mentioned NIC payments. You said part-time, you hired them part-time and so on. Vacation and all these things that we taken into account. Now, if you have an employee who works, say 3 days a week, 150 days a year, then they are entitled to get vacation pay and all of that. So as a young entrepreneur, these are all the things that you need to be mindful of. Sure. So you hire somebody, you say, have you there part-time, but they come, the law says any day or part of a day. So 1 hour is part of a day. They come for 1.5 hours, 2 hours every day. You figure they work 3 days a week. I don't owe them vacation because they don't work for me, they come part-time. You do owe them vacation.
So let's change it up a little. I work at my salon now. I'm there full time, but on Saturdays I need a little extra help. So just one Saturday every week, I have somebody come in to assist. Do I still need to make NIC contributions for this person?
All right, so then you hire them under a different arrangement.
Right.
So you have contracts of service and contracts for service. So a contract for service, the employee comes, you say, well, you have a restaurant, I need you to clean the chicken, make the juice. You can come whatever time you want and you can leave as a contract for service. So I'm paying you for your service.
Right.
You don't have a lunch hour, you can come at midnight, you can come at 2 o'clock in the morning, you can spend the whole day,
Right.
5 minutes. Once you get the job done, you leave.
Okay.
And there's a contract of service where you give the person a lunch hour and so on, so that person becomes your employee.
Right.
Yeah, but in a case of, in that case, you would not have to pay NIC if it's just 1 day a week.
Just 1 day.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. I'm learning so much here. I am, and I think that you are as well. Giovanni, how are you doing this evening? Well?
Yes.
Okay. So I understood that you've dealt quite a bit with fraud. Yes?
Yes.
So as a small business, how do I protect myself from fraud? How do I begin? Where do I begin? And what are the different types of fraud that small businesses are more susceptible to?
I have several clients who have come to me and have found themselves on the wrong side of the law, pretty much because they did not understand
Right.
what the terms and references are in relation to the commission of an offense. One example which we have seen happening quite frequently is that you may have heard in the news on different occasions of persons who are involved in the importation of vehicles on behalf of others
Right.
into St. Lucia, finding themselves in problems as it relates to the commission of offenses. The police would have charged several persons for obtaining property by deception, which is obtaining monies on the basis of a false representation that they were going to be ordering a vehicle when that money would have been used by the middle person, that person. So it requires you to, in terms of protecting yourself, because earlier I was cracking the joke that I have to help individuals stay out of prison in relation to matters of this nature. And so it would mean that you would have to put proper systems in place not to fall into that sort of trap.
Right.
And so with the example of obtaining property by deception, a lot of the times the absence of documentation, financial evidence, or persons not going for a banking system, using those systems or those practices that would not lend to developing a paper trail that can lend or lead to those persons being on the wrong side of the law. Because if I order a vehicle and I can't get my vehicle, the next thing I'm going to do is to go to the police if you cannot deliver or return my money. And so it is very important that persons understand that it is quite easy for them to fall into the trap of being accused of theft if they are not able to deliver, whether it's in relation to goods or services. One thing I realized that is picking up in St. Lucia is that of mortgage fraud, where a lot of young people, in order to start up a business, in order to obtain financing, would misrepresent how much they actually earn in order to qualify for a higher loan. And so I have seen examples and defended clients who have done that very thing, and they've been arrested and charged because the financial institutions, having discovered that, would then make a report in relation to these individuals. So there's quite a lot involved. One last thing I want to point out, however, is that there is a developing, well, not a developing, it is something which is quite ripe in our jurisdiction, and that is money laundering. A very big thing.
Yes, I wanted to touch
And
on
because of the wide definition of money laundering, it makes it quite easy for someone dealing with monies to find themselves being investigated. Not too long ago, I had a client who came to me and he had difficulties depositing monies into his bank account. He came with lots of euros, and he said it was from the sale of conch, Labi.
Yes.
And that created a problem for him because of the vast amount of cash that he was working with. A lot of them deal in cash-intensive businesses. And so that can lead, if you do not have a proper system in place, if you do not have documentation to be able to show the source of the funds, that you can either find yourself being charged for money laundering, or if you are found with a large sum of money, the police can actually stop you and charge you or seek to forfeit that cash. There was one case that I remember advising St. Lucia on, and this will be my last point on that, where a guy had a bucket of coins, and his property was searched, and a small quantity of marijuana was found. That alone was sufficient for the police to seize that bucket of coins that amounted to in excess of $6,000, and that money was forfeited because the individual was unable to explain. He said, well, you know what, I'd been collecting this money over a period of time. But just on the basis of finding some marijuana,
It was assumed
the
that
cash was forfeited. So you have a lot of that taking place. So for those of you who have businesses, it is important to document an account, have an accounting system where you are able to prove the source of your funds, so that if for any reason you find yourself on the wrong side of the law, it is not simply a matter of being arrested and charged, but you get to keep your monies.
And you also touched on money laundering, and that's something that I wanted to ask about. A lot of our clients are seeking investors for their businesses. How am I supposed to know that this person who is offering to invest in my business, that the money that they are willing to give to me is actually clean money and they're not using me as a source of money laundering? Jadia, how do I protect myself?
As young entrepreneurs, particularly those who are seeking investors and either to start up your business or to take your business to the next level, it is extremely important that apart from moving with the knowledge of who is who and doing your research to know that the individual who is before you is of good character, has a legitimately registered business or incorporated company, I think you have to move a little bit with the spirit and discernment. It is so difficult in this environment because the most polished persons, the most well-presented persons usually are the individuals who are skilled and trained to present themselves as everything that they are not. And you would have heard Giovanni speak a little while ago about the issue of fraud. Most times, persons are carried away and literally would give in and believe that the individuals who are before them, who are promising them different things, it may not necessarily be money, but people will be promising you opportunities. They'll be promising you probably networking solutions. They will be promising you services and goods as well. It is difficult to distinguish what is legitimate from what is a fraudulent transaction, because these individuals are trained and literally set up their presentation so that it could fit within what appears to be a legitimate transaction. And so what I would say to young people is that there are a lot of agencies, there are a lot of organizations within the various ministries. There are a lot of entities that are set up that will assist. It is almost impossible that Export St. Lucia would have never heard about a company which is in St. Lucia, which has a market in Dubai to send your leather sandals. I would say to you, as enticing as it may seem when you get these messages online, or when people, send these emails to you and address you as if, they're your godmother because they know you by your first name, it is always best to check with the agencies that lead in the various areas. There are so many other agencies where there's a database. If someone comes to you and says, well, my name is Jadia Jn Pierre, I operate global industries, we have been established for the past 15 years, etc. A simple search at the registry of companies would be able to tell you whether in fact that business is a legitimate one that is operating in St. Lucia. So it is always best to do the checks. Do not rely solely on the package that is before you. Do the checks and reach out to the agencies, reach out to the government entities, and even other businesses, the financial institutions, for example. There are systems in place where they would be able to do searches and would be able to filter out a lot of the bona fide investors, the bona fide agencies, from those that are set up simply to steal your information, because it's not always money that they're after. Sometimes it is your ideas, as you would have heard from Ms. Augustin. So I would say be in touch with the agencies. Stay close to YEA, stay close to Export St. Lucia, Consumer Affairs Department, and at almost every point, there is an entity that is established and operating in St. Lucia that will be able to guide you as to whether what is being presented is legitimate or not.
And with all these safeguards, let's just say that I have not heard you speak and I have fallen victim. Someone has offered to invest in my business. I am selling CMOS. And I'm trying to export CMOS overseas. Somebody has offered to invest in my business. I have gone ahead and gotten into business with them. But then it's only after the fact I have found out that this is actually a money laundering operation. Maybe this person is involved in some sort of illicit activity, and I am now implicated because I have gone into business with them and I have received monies from them. Is there anything that protects me, since I did not know, I genuinely didn't know?
As you would have heard from Mr. Giovanni James, the money laundering laws are very broad. However, the protection for the innocent third party is that if you could show that you had no knowledge,
Right.
if you could show that you absolutely trusted and considered it to be a legitimate transaction, then criminal liability would not fall on you. So this is one of the offenses that requires knowledge. However, if you do not keep the paper trail, if you do not keep the proper records, as my colleague would have indicated, it becomes even more difficult for you to show, because the circumstances sometimes would align in such a way that only you and God would believe that you're an innocent party.
Right.
So it is always good to keep your records, to do the checks, but just remember that there must be knowledge for you to be liable for the offense.
I'd like to speak a little bit about contracts, and maybe Teddyson, you could help us in this regard. You could get the ball rolling. What are the essential parts of a contract going into any type of business contract? What do you need to look out for, and how important is it to read the fine print? Have there been any instances where you omitted the fine print and got into trouble?
Well, I went through these things before they're happening now.
Yeah,
You have to understand when you
Yeah, yeah.
when
We
you
big and we have
yeah
sense.
yeah when you just starting off and you in that pursuit of wanting to be and wanting to be in these things, you tend to forget know certain things. Even being able to have a manager, with your stuff. Sometimes you tend to do it on your own.
your
But
own,
with me, I had my management, team, and when you sent contracts over, we went through, everything from the deposit to the venue, how many people in attendance, what is the percentage of the door, what are the certain questions that you ask to make sure. Starting before, I had situations where you figure out a promoter. Yeah, man, I know that one. He good, and that's the worst mistake you can ever do, because these are the ones that you pretty much have to watch.
Yes,
You
yes,
understand,
absolutely.
and just making sure your fine prints and everything is okay. So right now, everything is legit as to what needs to happen.
Awesome, awesome. So when our entrepreneurs are developing contracts, for example, a lot of them source the goods that they need for their businesses from other suppliers. What do we need to have in these contracts to protect ourselves? How do we do that?
Well, there's the offer, and the acceptance, and the consideration. Those are the three pillars of contracts.
Yes.
So, and some people actually don't realize, and they're so keen on looking at the figure, and they don't even realize that the actual seller is not the seller who they actually are dealing with.
Right.
So, but those are your pillars. So what is it that you're selling? Who are you selling it to? And how much are you selling it for? And then everything else falls with it. Where you're going to deliver it, how you're going to, receive it, what time, when, how. But you're quite right. People are usually so keen that they actually do the contract by a handshake, or as you said, I know that fella, right? And it's all done, and it's only when it goes wrong that they come to us. And it's like, well, where's the contract? The what? No, but he paid me, I gave him the thing, and he now doesn't want to give me back whatever else it was. I think I said it earlier on as well, it's to come to us, or even if you start on those ones you find online as a little basis, and then come to us and say, well, can I use this as a basis?
Right.
And then build up from there. To ensure that, again, the word from earlier on, that you're properly protected, that you are not giving away your ideas or your products, that you are being paid fairly for your ideas or your product, that there is sustainability in it as well. It's not just all of a sudden you think you have this ongoing contract, but you didn't read it properly, and you've just given away everything that you have in one go, and it's gone. Yeah.
So if I enter into a contract with a supplier, a verbal contract, we have no written contract, but the supplier has told me that he is going to supply me with X amount of goods by this day, and this is absolutely essential to my business, and the supplier fails to come through. Since I have no written contract, do I have any legal recourse in the matter? Can I
You
do
can have
anything?
oral contracts.
Yes.
But a bit like what I think you both said, is that paper trail obviously makes it so much easier when things go wrong.
Right.
So an oral contract when things are going right is an oral contract.
Yes.
And it smoothly goes along. Here's your $10. Here's my item. Here's your $10. Here's my item. And then one day it's, well, I'm only giving you $5.
Right.
And then the problems start. And now you've got before you said 10, now you're saying 5. The issue then arises. Obviously, had it been written down, we knew that it was always going to be 10, and that's it. But no, you can have your oral contracts. But it is always still better, somehow or the other you can, to have it in writing. Yeah.
You must always look at certainty of terms in a contract. I always say that a contract works perfect until people fall apart. And then you have different interpretations, understandings of what was actually agreed upon. So it is very important to have certainty as it relates to what it is you are agreeing to in your contract, whether it be a verbal or a written contract.
Right.
And once you have that as entrepreneurs, it makes it so much easier, not just in terms of a breach of a contract, but both parties understanding. So even using the example that you gave, what if you did not specify the time
Right.
that you were expecting the goods to be delivered? And so that can create an issue. So all of those things, sometimes it is important to go through the stages of deciding exactly what it is you want, and then you arrive at a workable contract.
Awesome.
Let me first say this, that a contract, as Natalie has indicated, does not necessarily have to be a written contract. Whilst ideally it ought to be a written contract, because in that contract you would have the offer, acceptance, consideration in terms of what the value of the contract is. It will also speak to termination. It will also speak to incidents that will give rise to the contract being, how should I say, no longer in existence because of maybe hurricanes or something of that nature in simple terms. But insofar as oral contracts are concerned, what it speaks to is where you have a situation, for instance, we were speaking about the employee situation earlier on. So you have the family member working 7 days a week or 5 days a week. That family member is providing a service which you are benefiting from. That in itself, by virtue of the relationship between your family member, irrespective of the fact that it is your family member, there is a contract. Because there's a benefit and there is a detriment. So that in itself speaks to a contract. So similarly, in terms of your suppliers, whilst it is that it may not necessarily be a written contract, but the fact that the supplier has provided you with the goods that you have requested, that in itself is a contract. The fact that you may have written a check, that in itself is a contract. The fact that they've provided you with the paper trail, the receipt, that is evidence that there is a contract between you and the supplier.
She said, even if there is no written contract between you and a family member, the fact that you provide a service means that there's a contract, there's an understanding. The law is specific in that regard. The law requires a written contract for family members. It does. So you could be helping your mother for all we know. Even if she's paying you a stipend of $2,000 a month, you're helping her. There's no employment contract there. So the law is specific. It must be written for family members.
I think it is important for us to understand the application of the law to various circumstances, because based on what my colleague just indicated, once you have an agreement, it's a contract. For anything, employment, service, goods, you have different types of contracts. So you may have the law saying I'll ask a question, if I may.
Sure.
If I am working for my dad on his farm, and he pays me every fortnight, is that, and there's no agreement, there's no written agreement, but for whatever reason, he and I fall out, and he decides he's not going to pay me. I want my money.
You said that was your allowance.
Yes, pocket money.
Is it a matter where we are to assume that there is no agreement which allows me to enforce my rights to be compensated or paid for services rendered? As opposed to, for example, in an income tax or an NIC type situation. Because I'll tell you something, once you get lawyers around a table, you're going to get this debate and discussion. But to make it practical, I think these are some of the things that you have to think of in relation to dealing with these types of situations. Things that you may never think will come up are likely to come up as entrepreneurs. And so perhaps the best practice would be, if you are in doubt, as we may be in doubt right now, write it.
Write it. So if you're in doubt, write it down.
Because I will give you an example. A brother and a sister the brother starts up a company. It is young. It is just starting up. His sister comes to work with him. 30 years down the line, he figure, well, you know what? Business kind of close up, kind of winding down, so I want to restructure my business and send her home. You come to the labor department and you say to us, boy, he just sent me home. He said restructuring. I want my redundancy pay. As per the law, you are not entitled to redundancy pay if you have nothing in writing saying that you are employed with your brother working for his company. And I want us to understand that.
I am certain for a lot of our entrepreneurs in here, especially those with the micro and small businesses, that you will have family members involved in your business. And usually that is because of convenience and because of the flexibility that they would offer. But the discussion here alone tells you why it is important for your business relationships to be in writing. And you have to make a distinction between your family relationships, your friendships, and your business relationships. And I'm telling you this now, not just as a lawyer, but as someone who runs a business, okay? Most times, familiarity invites a sort of informal type of interaction. Familiarity will cause someone to call you because they know you and begin to talk to you about a situation that they are facing at work, and they expect you in the middle of your day to set aside what you have to do, and these are your billable hours that you're speaking about, and entertain to hear what the supervisor would have just done and what can they do in the situation. That type of approach can only come from someone who knows you in that way and someone who is your family member. You discourage this from very early by drawing the line between your friendship, between your relationship and your business. Because when you are on your business's time, you are literally sitting on your money. And so it is important to formalize the relationships. It is important to have in writing. And it may not necessarily be a contract drawn up before a lawyer where two parties go in and there is a witness for each party. It could be as simple as a WhatsApp communication where you state very clearly what it is and there is an acknowledgement in writing. So when we speak about contracts, it does not always have to be black on white, 5 pages with all of these clauses, which you probably do not even understand because the legal language is just so difficult sometimes. Yes. It could simply be something that you document in your WhatsApp, or it could be something that is written. Once it is clear, as would have been indicated by Giovanni, what are the terms?
I was just going to add, though, that a slight distinction would be, and there might be some of you where you've come in, you're not employing your family member, you actually have given them like a share in your business. Yes, you've both gone together to the company's registry and formed your business. You've now got a partner, so who is your family member. That's a different scenario altogether. Yeah, because this person now has an vested interest in that company. So even if you want to get rid of them or you fall apart, you're still going to get something, because whether it's 5% or 50%, that is due to them. In that situation, you can possibly get away, I still don't like it because you have a shareholders agreement, with not having that contract in writing. Yes. Yeah, because you're both now vested in this company, and you know that if I put in 20 hours work and you put in 5 hours work, we might still make a money, but I'm going to be upset that you're only putting 5. But then again, if you're only got 5% and I've got 20% of this company or 95% of this company, I'm going to get my fair share. In those situations, you can possibly get away with not having something in writing. And I would probably say that's the only distinction I can make as to when I would say, okay, you're still protected.
Looking around the room, I can see that we have a lot of young people. So again, giving some free advice. Young people tend to be into information technology. And so sometimes you may not be able to afford, for example, to go to an attorney or have the time to go to or not even know of the various departments where you can access information. For me, information is power. And so what I would recommend in all this discussion that we are having in your own free time, make Google your best friend, because you will be surprised the amount of information. It may not be on point, but it gives you a starting point in terms of any question you may have. And of course, with the government trying to go fully digital at some point and a lot of information now being available online, it will be practical for you as young people, as entrepreneurs, to, if you have a question, Google it, do some reading, and I can guarantee you, you will have a better idea and understanding in relation to what your rights are, what your responsibilities are as young business owners.
Everybody agrees that it is better to have it written. You can have informal contracts, but it is better to have it written. You need to know the type of engagement you're entering with your employees, if you have employees. I've seen circumstances where one claim can run a business broke. So you have somebody working for you, you don't pay them overtime for 4 years, 5 years. The person comes to make a complaint, lodge a complaint. Then next thing you know, you get a phone call saying you owe the person $70,000 in overtime pay. Yes? And for most small businesses, $70,000 to pay will close down your business. Yeah. And you will still have to pay it because you owe the person wages. All right? So there's a few things to note. You need to have something in writing. Better to have it in writing than an informal contract. You must pay attention to statutory regulations, the NIC, your tax and so on. NIC very important because if you don't pay the NIC for the individual, even if your business closed down, especially if you're deducting that 5%, then that's a criminal offense. You'll have to speak to one of the attorneys there. Yeah? Overtime pay, how to discipline your employees, that's very important. Before, you could have just said, hey, you go home. You can no longer you can still do it, but you're going to run afoul of the law. So there are procedures and processes to discipline your employees, whether it's misconduct, whether it's performance. My advice would be, if you're in doubt, always verify with somebody at the Labor Department, a labor professional. Again, the advice is free. Just make some time to find out, because small mistakes, little mistakes can cost you your business. All right?
My question is in terms of the enforcement of the contracts and the inefficiencies in the legal system. So take, for instance, I'm a micro, small, and medium enterprise. I have a contract, let's say, in the value of $10,000. And then, for whatever reason, the party to the contract, has not lived up to their responsibility. How do I, reclaim my funds? What's owed to me? If I go to a lawyer, by the time I pay for the services, my $10,000 has already been spent.
What?
And it takes me years to get recourse. So what happens in a case like that? How do we advise young person how to deal with that?
It is always better to negotiate than to litigate. That is always, even as an attorney, I think all attorneys, when someone comes to us with disputes, we are never in a rush to go before the courts because we understand the cost, both in terms of your finances and in terms of your time. And I don't even think that it is worth our while as attorneys to be up and down in court over a $10,000 contract. So we'll always, as much as possible, try to meet the other side or to speak to the attorney on the other side to see how we are able to come to the table so that we can settle it. Sometimes you find it extremely difficult where either or both parties are digging their heels in the sand, and it makes it a little difficult. But if you have a written contract, most written contracts would have dispute resolution clauses in there, and it would state exactly what is to happen or what avenue we are supposed to go to, whether it be mediation, arbitration, etc., if we are to deal with a breach of the contract. The first step, I would say, is to speak to the person on the other side. So please, the first point of contact, the minute you recognize something is about to go wrong, you don't necessarily have to wait for the person to breach just so that you could say, well, we're going for the full sum of the contract and so on. speak to the other side. Dialogue avoids a lot of the issues that we would face. It will avoid a lot of costs. And even as attorneys, when we are faced with issues and we write, we would engage each other before we even take the matter to court, because we have to engage in that type of, it's under the rules, the procedure rules, to see if we could settle matters, and litigation is actually a last resort, particularly because of the cost and the time.
How do you protect your content? I mean, we spoke about intellectual property. That was our first discussion. And we have influencers, we have wannabe influencers, we have upcoming influencers. How do you protect that?
I'm not very tech savvy, but I'm thinking that nowadays, going forward, you probably would have to, if you created a meme, you do a little drawing, and again, you'll take that to someone and make sure that they've seen it on this day. I created this. I woke up in the middle of the night, this great idea came to me. I drafted it, I drew it down, or I videoed it, or it could be a saying sometimes. It could be that one phrase that takes off and the whole world's using it, but you've got to write it down and give it, even if you give it to someone and say, look, today, last night when I woke up, this came to mind. Teddy, hold on to me for that. See, on this day, Natalie Augustin came up with WhatsApp. I wrote it down, giving it to him. Yeah? I've now got someone who knows that it was me that night. I woke up and I had this idea, and it's my idea.
Most time content is created, is not planned. So there's this, young people would know, if you get a man like me, you get substance, you get quality. I'm sure all of you all heard that already.
Never.
The guy who said that, somebody just recorded him saying it. Right. But somebody took it, put it in a song, and it blew up. Right. How do you benefit after the fact it has blown up?
It's almost like first to the line, first to the mark, first to the whatever. The first person that can say, well, that was me. You've now got a dispute between the two of them. But
so
if that other
you have
person,
his voice in your song, saying whatever he said. So that's the intro to your song. His voice saying whatever he said in the recording.
So I recently came back from a trademark conference, and things like voice recordings and your voice, there are certain countries, I don't know how many countries where you can actually protect that. Okay. Not everywhere. Okay. So as I said, we're so far behind in St. Lucia as to what can be protected. Yeah, but I mean, there's some things like, so we're not at the taste, touch, smell, but there are certain countries that if you can describe the taste to the extent where you could almost taste it by reading it, you can protect it. Okay. Wow. Yeah, we're not there yet. Wow. We've got a long way to go.
I have a two-part question. Given that we are at a mixer, what advice would you give to people looking to collaborate with other entrepreneurs? And also, let's say a big company, suddenly you're popular, and a big company reaches out to you, wants to do something to you. Do you seek legal advice immediately?
So yes, the simple answer is yes. To protect yourself, you should have contracts. Collaboration is good, but not everyone who's seeking to collaborate with you is doing it with good intentions, right? And depends on your line of business. The individual you may be in a position where they are simply taking advantage of your market, of your following, and if you do not protect yourself, there will be nothing for you in return. So the first question you should ask when anyone comes to you with a bright idea is, what is in it for me? Because the fact that you are coming to me means that you have seen an opportunity in me. You have seen an opportunity in my business. So if you don't quite understand, and even if you do, it is not selfish or it is not wrong to ask, what is in it for me? And I would tell you straight out, if you cannot see a benefit to your business, then it is not worth your time. It certainly would not be worth putting your money on the line to do it.
Can you give us the cost or a price range for the copyrights and the trademarks?
It was an idea that came out from one of the tables I sat on, and it was like to do these different packages. So we're actually working on something like that in our firm, where it's like different stages. So if you're an absolute startup, it's going to be like next to nothing. More to cover your actual costs. I think SLISBA does something similar to that anyway. Yeah. But that's how we see it. Because, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, if I can assist you at the get-go, I'm hoping that when you really make it and the big contracts come, the big issues come, that you're going to come back to me and really want my service then. And I'm looking at the government filing fees, forgetting even legal fees. It's something like $100 per mark, per something. So it's not a lot. it can be as simple as a couple $100 for absolute basic. If someone like me says, look, I'm not going to worry with you about the legal charges, but obviously I'm not going to put my hand in my pocket and pay government fees for you. And it's something like, $100 for a mark, and then $150 if it's 2 marks, and it's a word mark or an actual logo. So, but that's kind of the price range you're looking at. So we always think it's too expensive, and I'm going to leave that up sort of last on my list. But I would say no, it's not. So it's a good question to ask, but it is generally affordable if you're just not scared about it.
If I trademark my brand's logo and I include my logo as a permanent part of all my customized designs, just so that you know I make handmade accessories, jewelry, and bags, would that protect all the designs that I make after I trademark my logo?
The logo is just your logo. Yeah, so as I say, I'm Natalie Augustin, and that might be I do a nice little design for my law firm, and that's my logo. But that's separate apart from what I now design. Yeah, so those things have to be patented, protected differently. So one thing is that they're going to know, don't know what your name is or your brand is, but they're going to know the brand. Yes, if you put it on your new designs, then obviously they know that's your, it belongs to you, and you've created it. But the actual creation now is something different, but it has to be innovative. So just because it's a handbag that looks like all the other handbags, you might put your logo on it so you know that's yours, but you've not actually created anything new. It's a handbag.
How do you differentiate someone who is a freelancer versus someone who is a part-time worker or your employee?
Earlier I said there are 2 types of contracts: contracts for service and contracts of service. So for service would be a freelancer. They don't work for you. You don't give them a time to come to work. You don't give them a lunch hour. So you do these designs here. You say, I need everything to be here by midday. They can come and do it in 1 hour, half an hour, 5 minutes. That's not your concern. They get your job done.
So once you don't specify the time frame, that's what you're saying?
No. That's not what I'm saying. The person is not your employee. They come to you because you want them to provide a service. So you are paying them to provide a service. That's why it's called a contract for service. So the service would be whatever it is that you do in your business. If it is to move all of your decorations after, your job is to come and clean up. I'm not telling you to do it at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. I just want it done by tomorrow morning. So whatever time you come, that is on you. I don't owe you a lunch hour. You don't work for me. You can bring 20 people to assist you. That's on you. You just charge me $1,000. I pay it, and you get the job done. A contract of service is different. Whether it is part-time, full-time, it is different. That person works for you. So you give them a time to come to work. You are legally binding to them. So they have a lunch hour and all of that. You leave work at a certain time. These are your tasks to complete. I'm going to supervise you every step of the way. If you don't perform, then I will write you up and so on. That is a contract of service.
So basically, my first question is for creatives seeking to create a team. What are the core members you think that team should entail, and how should they be compensated? And secondly, how do you scale your music career to move from like a local act to being a performer who gets booked and recognized outside the country?
Building a team, somebody who knows what they about. A proper manager, there's a difference between your manager and a booking agent. The booking agent actually is the one that organizes the calls or takes go look for the work for you, whereas you have an overall manager that would probably manage what you write about, your whole overall, your dressing, the way you are, your brand, what they see fit, what they see that fits you as a individual. Compensating them would be a part of your, let's say your fee, to perform. Let's say is $5,000 or let's say $1,000 to perform. The manager normally gets like a 25%, part of it, because obviously they bring in, they place you in different places. There are other managers that take more, there are other managers that take, less, but you cannot do it and not be able to compensate them. They have to be able to make money, off of what you do, and not that what they've invested also, in you. So sometimes you have a manager, you have a booking agent, you have somebody that does the PR, you have somebody that... The team can be very, very huge. Yeah. You understand? Where everybody has to eat, off of that. So the more that they push you, the more that you get to that next level. You got to make a conscious decision as to what really you want to do, and try to network and align yourself with the right people. You understand? That can allow these things to happen.
I make chips and salsa, but there are other multi-faceted companies all over the world who already have chips and salsa. So, and we were speaking about, from the beginning of the conversation, how do I go about protecting my intellectual properties, especially when you have those big companies who've already gone and invented the wheel, and then we just follow it. So, I'm speaking for myself, but I'm looking at some of the other persons. We have persons who are nail techs and whatever the case may be, and persons with salons. Anything you can just name it, it's already been created. So how do we, as small island beings so far back, protect ourselves?
It might be that your salsa, you've got some secret ingredient in there, or a combination of things. It's, again, nothing new, but you've just added two things together that just gives it this unique taste. Yeah? You can now protect that. You think everyone does salsa, but you may actually think, well, I might think, damn, this is amazing. What's in it? Yeah. Don't tell me. Yeah? Just don't tell me. Yeah? Let me go and tell the whole world that, what's your name? Rian has made this amazing salsa, you're going to taste it. And then the word spreads. I still don't know what's in it. You can now protect that formula, yeah? Stick your name on it, and it spreads that way. But that's that one secret that you will keep. And after a while, that's how you might be able to distinguish yourself. Yeah, because Rian, right? Rian. Salsa, Rian. Salsa, right? It's just absolutely amazing. There's this logo on your little jar, and the world is now starting to taste it.
Rian, let me tell you something. Change the mental. Change the way you view. Change the way you think about what you have. Because your vibe is like,
everybody else is doing it.
Your aura is like everybody doing it. So what? So then what makes you different? Think about what makes you different, or what you want to put in there that have you differentiated from everybody else. Yeah. Try to change that.
Yes.
Because if you go into everything with that kind of thinking, you're not even going to have any motivation to do anything different. What if you had some, just like she was saying, some secret kind of thing you have in that, the boy, they know it's you they can come to for that. So not because everybody doing the same thing to have that kind of way of thinking and that kind of attitude. If you have that, that's where you're going to stick. So try to change that.
Just a scenario where two companies are coming together to create a product. Now, we intend to split the cost in terms of paying employees. So in terms of a structure standpoint and in terms of contracts that you spoke about earlier, how do you go about setting that up? Do you then form a separate company to then say, hey, we're hiring you? Let's say the combined company will now be ABC Corporation. So the contracts will be ABC Corporation with the employee in question. Or is there a cheaper way, because we want to avoid, creating a whole new company just for the sake of paying employees, etc. So what do you advise in that regard?
You can actually do it without forming a new company. But in order to be properly advised, we'd have to know what is the product, who the two companies involved, what is each, whether both of the companies are currently involved in the same type of business. There's so many variables that must be on the table for you to be able to get the right advice as to what exactly is the best fit. But two companies can enter into a contract as it relates to a particular type of product. Businesses do it all of the time. Lawyers do it all of the time, where you enter into agreements, you practice out of the same chambers, you share costs as it relates to staff, etc. But it is clearly itemized in there who is responsible for what is a shared cost, what is the individual cost, etc. But the details on each side must be on the table so that you are properly advised and you're aware as to what are some of the nuances that you must make provisions for in the contract if you're adamant that you do not want to amalgamate.
The best way to deal with this type of situation is to have a contract between the two companies. One company is going to have to take the lead if it's for employment, take the lead on employment, because as one of the panelists would have indicated, if you have a contract of employment, then the person must come under a particular company. And so once you can have this agreement, this contract between the two companies, one taking the lead as the employer, then that may assist. So in terms of the practicalities of it, you bring your monies together, you know that both of you are contributing towards NIC, taxes are being deducted. That is how I would deal with it if you do not want to amalgamate.
Just to interject, the concern with that, because I know I've had a relationship with the company for some time, but being in business with them may be a different scenario. So I essentially want to test the waters, see, hey, how it goes, and if I don't like it, I can always have an exit plan. But forming a whole new company just complicates things, in my opinion.
You're not getting rid of your existing company. So your existing company could still be doing something else. So maybe you're together going to be working on C. And you're doing A as it is right now, they're doing B, and together you're forming C. It doesn't mean you can still continue to do A, separate and apart from B doing B, but under this one, whatever you're doing, you're working on C, and all your employees are under C. So if it doesn't work, you still have A and they have B. You're just going to get rid of C.
For young entrepreneurs, it is always important that in your business, you take care of you as well. There is a lot of discussion about what we need to do for employees, what we need to do in terms of, paying NIC for this one and doing all of that. But you also have to remember that you have a responsibility to yourself as well. And as self-employed persons, I would advise everyone to pay your NIC for yourself. These are your benefits, your future benefits. If you work and you work and you work and you take care of everyone and you do nothing to protect yourself, you do nothing in terms of your retirement, in terms of your savings, then at the end of the day, everybody lives happy and then you are left with nothing. So I just wanted to leave with you as a final word that you must always take care of you. Do not consider your business simply to be existing for the pleasure or to meet the needs of others. Yes, your employees are important, but you also need to ensure that you are featured. You need to ensure that you put things in place for your own benefit and enjoyment as well.
Thank you so much to all of you. It was indeed a pleasure. I am so happy that we had some beautiful questions from the audience. The discourse was very, very engaging. I absolutely enjoyed it, and thank you so much for taking the time to be with us this evening. We are eternally grateful.